Good afternoon, dear students. Welcome to our ÉPICA session, Observation, Reflection, and Action in Education. It's a pleasure to have students from Foreign Language Acquisition and Learning, Didactics of English, and Methodology in Foreign Language Teaching. ÉPICA is a collaborative learning space where we connect observation with reflection and transform it into meaningful pedagogical action. Today's agenda includes 3 presentations. First, Introduction and Key Theories of Foreign Language Acquisition, a Gamification Journey. Second, Critical Literacies and Emotional Engagement in EFL through World Literature in Colombia. And third, Heliconia's Dreamers, Siembra, Florece, Transforma. You can share your questions through YouTube chat. They will be addressed at the end of each presentation. Please note that the attendance and evaluation link will be available in the chat starting at 6:30 p.m. Let's begin and enjoy this learning experience.
Okay, welcome everyone. So our first talk will be Introduction and Key Theories of EFL, a Gamification Journey by Maria Fernanda Gepul. Maria Fernanda holds a master's degree in pedagogy from Mariana University. She has over 13 years of experience as an English and French teacher and 7 years in pedagogical practice. She has participated in educational projects such as Nariño Bilingüe, aimed at improving English proficiency among public school teachers. She has also led conferences on pedagogical practices across different educational levels. Currently, she works as a tutor at UNAD and contributes to curriculum and pay innovation projects in educational institutions. Welcome, dear Maria Fernanda. You can open your camera now and you can start.
Okay, thank you very much, teacher Silvia, for that amazing introduction. Okay, so I gonna present my gamified activity. Is okay?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Well, okay. I would like to present my gamified activity. This is an amazing task that I did on my gamification course, Enter into the World of Foreign Language Acquisition. First, I would like to present the purpose of this activity, that is to help students to review and internalize key concepts about language acquisition, about language learning, and different early theories of language acquisition, okay? Basically, I adapted my activity regarding some principles of learning theories connected with gamification. Why did I choose gamification? Because it increases students' motivation and engagement. Also, it allows students to interact with different elements to help learn in a dynamic and meaningful way. Okay? The idea is that instead of traditional reading, this activity allows students to explore content through a short and attractive information and interactive challenge. The idea is that students read, reflect, and then participate actively. Moreover, I would like to mention that my activity is mainly based in behaviorist principles because it includes repetition of concepts, immediate feedback, and rewards. These elements are important because help to reinforce learning and increase students' motivation and engagement, okay? As you can see here, my presentation, the game includes different interactive elements designed to catch student attention and encourage participation. The title, this is a special title because invite the students to begin a learning journey with increasing curiosity and engagement. Okay? let's gonna continue with the purpose of this game. It is important to present the purpose of the game because in this way, the students, they are gonna to identify the principal goal or the purpose of the game to focus and start participating in the game. Moreover, I would like to mention that it is important to present the mechanics of the game. Why? What is important to present the mechanics of the game? Because students learn how the system works, including levels, challenge, and motivate the students to continue participating in the game and internalizing different concepts of foreign language acquisition. Levels is to create a sense of progression and also to guide the student step by step through the content. The challenge, it is to motivate the students, and points acts as a reinforcement. It is important to present the purpose of the game to help the students understand the learning goal and to maintain the focus on the activity, okay? For example, in this part, when students arrive to the main door, they are invited to begin the experience and they open the door and enter to the first level. So in the first level, students review the concepts, okay? What concepts? The concepts that they are gonna review here are basically the concept regarding to foreign language acquisition and the difference between learning and acquisition, okay? They find different resources such as text, books, where they read information supported by authors to continue participating in the challenge. It is important that the students interact with different elements that they find in the game to comprehend how is the mechanic of the game and to have clear ideas about what they have to do in the game. For example, before starting the challenge, here they have to review information about the challenge and what they have to do in the challenge. In this case, for example, they are going to face an easy challenge that is so simple. Just students have to review the information and they have to complete the information with different words, like, for example, process, learning, okay? Through the game, students will receive feedback, points, which are key elements in gamification, and these elements increase motivation and encourage students to continue exploring the activity. And points are important because they provide feedback, motivate the students, and reinforce learning. After completing the first challenge, they are invited to complete the second challenge, okay? And before starting the second challenge, they receive information. And this is important because the students have clear instructions. And what is important to present clear instructions? Because from a cognitivist perspective, clear instructions help the students to understand tasks, organize information, and learn more effectively. Okay, in this case, students must organize key information related to language learning and language acquisition. You could notice that they have two categories, so they have to organize this information into two categories, language learning and language acquisition. As you can see, the game helps the student internalize concepts through repetition, practice, and reinforcement. These elements are part of behaviorists proposed by Skinner. I created this activity to present my students a meaningful learning experience through gamification. Okay, so remember that it's important to present a message, motivational message, points, and feedback to continue exploring the next level, okay? To continue to the next level, students are invited to read instructions and understand what they have to do before starting the challenge. This level is important because here students, they are going to review and they are going to try to comprehend and internalize the early theories about second language acquisition through an interactive presentation. The idea here is that instead of traditional readings, this presentation allows the students to explore content through an interactive and attractive way. In this way, students read, reflect, and understand theories in an interactive way, okay? So after reading, the students continue checking different elements and instructions to understand what is the challenge about. Then the students interact with the game by clicking or selecting elements to enter to the challenge. In this activity, a student must choose the correct answer based on the theory and they have that they have read or they have reviewed before. As you can see, the challenge is increasing the difficulty level to support progressive learning. Because from a cognitive perspective, increasing difficulty level helps students process information progressively and develop deeper understanding. Okay? Then students are invited to continue to the final challenge. Remember, it is very important that students review the instructions and the information about the challenge, okay? And the final challenge is a little bit more complex and designed to reinforce student understanding of the topic. And here students apply what they have learned. This activity is a little bit more demanding and is also interactive, okay? At the end of the game, when students participate in this challenge, students receive feedback, points, and a final reward. And these elements are important because help students visualize the progress through the activity, okay? Remember, always feedback, a reward, and points. And these elements are basically some of the principles of behaviorism theories. And the final reward helps the student reinforce the main objective of the game. I could say, or I could mention, that in this way, the game not only review concepts or help a student internalize concepts, also promotes engagement, motivation, and meaningful learning through gamification, following some of the principles of behaviorism and cognitivism. Thank you. You have questions, you have doubts, please let me know right now.
Thank you very much, dear Professor Maria Fernanda, for your amazing presentation. I don't know, Prof. Yuri, if students have asked any questions through the YouTube chat. Dear students, do you have any questions about this presentation? Please let us know about through this chat. Okay, I'm going to read this question. How gamified activities help students to learn?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Well, as I mentioned in my presentation, I choose gamification to connect the learning of theories because gamification helped internalize concepts and learn in a meaningful way because it motivates, it presents immediate feedback, and it presents always rewards.
Here is another question in Spanish. ¿Ese juego se puede buscar en internet o dónde lo podemos encontrar? Les gustó mucho tu presentación. ¿En dónde la pueden encontrar?
Ok. Este juego lo pueden encontrar está al público en Genially, en las presentaciones de Genially, con el nombre de Entering to the World of Foreign Language Acquisition.
Dear Steffi, we had another one. So, what is gamification considered effective for language acquisition?
Okay, gamification is effective because motivated students, challenge students, and present different levels to see the progress of the learning process.
Thank you very much, Professor Maria Fernanda, again for your presentation, for your time. And we are going to continue. Professor Silvia, are you there?
Yes, here I am.
Okay, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you so much, dear professor. Let's continue then with our second talk, which is critical literacies and emotional engagement in EFL through world literature in Colombia by Juan David Rico Ortiz. Professor Juan David is an English teacher at a private school in the city of Ibagué, committed to the holistic development of his students through dynamic and meaningful teaching strategies. In addition, he is part of UNAD tutoring team for the course methodology in foreign language teaching, where he supports teacher training processes. His presentation focuses on analyzing how world literature contributes to the development of English language skills and the strengthening of critical thinking, integrating reading as a key tool in language learning. His goal is to continue strengthening innovative educational practices that positively impact English language instruction. Welcome, dear Professor Juan David.
Hello, thank you so much for that introduction, Silvia. You're so kind for it. And hello to everyone. As I already mentioned, my name is Juan David Rico. And today I'm going to be presenting an important study that I have been doing during the last 3 years here. And basically the focus of my presentation is the critical literacies and emotional engagement. Basically, this is something that I have always taken into account in my classes, since I have always noticed that the emotions in the classroom are not there. Yes, students are mostly following some rules or some instructions that the teachers provide always, but at the same time, we don't have or we don't provide the time for them to think about what is happening in their own processes and how they are feeling in this case. And of course, this is closely related to the English foreign language through the world of literature in Colombia. Yes, this is the main focus of it. So for starting, of course, this study must be focused on a context. And in the context, we have the technology. The first one, that is technology dominates a student's daily life. That is a study that we have been like checking all the time, since we noticed that our students cannot live without the cell phones or computers. Yes, they decided to change the books or everything that is around them for the technology, for a cell phone that can do their own work. The second one, it's decreasing reading habits among teenagers, and it's because we have the social media here. The social media is not a problem because I consider that it is a tool that helps us to visualize a lot of different problems that we have around the world and in our Colombian context as well. But the problem here is that our teenagers do not know how to control it. And in this way, what we have is that they decide to believe more on the TikToks that appear on their cell phones than on a book or a study or even an article that they can read through the internet, if we are talking about the technology here. And the third one, it's reading is often seen as an obligation, not enjoyment. And that is something that I want to remark here, because students see the reading as a punishment. And we as teachers have been like applying this kind of punishment into the class. Okay, if you don't want to read this, we are going to read the double of this. And that is a big problem here, because it's not an obligation. It's not like the punishment that we have to provide to our students when they don't follow the rules. Basically, it's when we are like the reading must be something that born from them in order to explore new universe, to explore new histories that can be told through these narratives that we are going to be finding there. So those are the three contexts. And of course, these three contexts rise the educational needs that we are going to be focused here. And the first one is the low motivation to read. The second one is the lack of emotional connection with text. And the third one is the superficial reading habits. And it's something that maybe we need to try to understand a little bit more, since the superficial reading habits, it's a really hard problem for all of us, and also for the critical thinking that we want to develop here. The low motivation, of course, it's a barrier that we are having here. And if we, for example, start to analyze the standardized things that we have in a country as Colombia, we can say that we can see that most of the tests are focused on the reading and the understanding of that reading, and of course the critical comprehension of that reading that we had. And the second one is like the base of everything, that is the lack of emotional connection with tests. If we don't try to connect something with our students, they are going to they're going to be feeling like we are not going to anywhere, yes. And that is something that we need to explore beyond. So taking that into account, I want to have this quote that I took from my master's, that it says, "Reading is not a window; it's an entire world to discover new universes." That is something amazing. If we start to analyze all the readings that we can have, from a novel until, I don't know, an article that can be exploring the needs of students who have Down syndrome. That now that we are in their weeks, we can understand that. This is a new universe and we are exploring something that we don't know, but we are learning in that way. So that is the first thing that I want to mention here. And what is the key principle of reading? Because basically you can wonder about it. And I have this key principle. Basically, reading the word precedes reading the word is something that Frey said in 1985, but Fernandez quoted in 2021. Yes, and why this is important? Because reading should be meaningful, reflective, and connected to students' reality. Maybe we are thinking about classic readings that we can have in our classrooms, such as, I don't know, novels from no more than 15 pages or 20 pages. But what I'm trying to demonstrate in this presentation is that it's not necessarily those kind of readings, but we are going to be beyond by a reading that is really hard, even for a university level. But with proofs, I'm gonna show you that it was something nice for the students for seventh grade. It's something that I want to see. It's something I want to show you, sorry. And in that case, the meaningful connection that students have with this reading, it's mandatory. Of course, the reflective part is going to boost that critical thinking that we want to create. And the connect the students to the reality is that empowerment of reading as a social practice, because we also need to understand this. The reading must be as a social practice. It's like to create a critical and analytical sense of all of us in order to demonstrate that we can change at least our own perspective and the perspective of people who are around us with a reading that can like be universal for everyone. Taking that into account, we have the problem. And in that case, we have the problems in two different ways. The first one is that teachers see the literature as difficult and complex because of the vocabulary and culture. And I can understand that most of the time when we are talking about a culture, it can be complicated because we don't share maybe that session or that part of the lives of the author, because that person can be an Arabian person, maybe, yes, and our culture is the country of it. However, if we start to analyze, everybody needs to understand that it must be respect, even if some people from there do not share that customs. And of course, the vocabulary, it's something that is really complicated because just to mention something, my final paper in the masters was related to the Divine Comedy. That is a book that it is for university students in ninth or 10th semester. However, it's necessary to understand that my students from seventh grade, they started to create all their knowledge, and the first semester of the school was focused on these book. So it's mandatory, and it's important to check that it took more than 6 months. However, the vocabulary was of course a barrier, but at the same time it was like the boost that they need to have in order to get more and more vocabulary when they speak and when they write. And of course, the difficulty of the things that we are showing to our students is like something that we as teachers can like make us think and just stop our process. And of course, we have the second part, that is the students. And in the first one, we have the lack of critical reading skills. That is something that we have due to the technology, that they prefer to just have the content of a video of, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds or 1 minute in order to check a book or to check anything else that can spend more time on it. And the second one is the influence by fast digital content, is the one that I already mentioned. Yes. So taking that into account, I want to say that this study has three purposes. The first one is to promote the critical thinking. Of course, as I mentioned, is like to try to eliminate this barrier, or eliminate this, yes, this barrier that we have in order to continue with the readings that can like fit more the knowledge of our students. The second one is promote the emotional engagement with the readings that the students are having into the classrooms. But the last one that I consider that is the umbrella of everything is reading as a social practice. Yes. And here I have a short quotation. It says that reading as a social practice means that reading is not just about understanding words, but about interpreting text based on one's experiences, cultures, and context. It allows the students to connect with they read with their own lives, promoting deeper understanding and critical thinking. So as you can see here, it's basically to say them, okay, how maybe the Divine Comedy can be connected to your own life. Teacher, for example, that was a response that I got from my student. Teacher, I understand that the Divine Comedy in the Inferno section is really hard because there we have a lot of sinners that committed a lot of sins that are so hard. But at the same time, I can see that, for example, when a person lies a lot, that person can be there. And I said like, yes, and teacher, most of the time I lie to my parents because I don't want to be punished by them. So in that case, I can see that that is a different an analysis that I can take from that the student mentioned in that moment. And I said like, okay, and what we can do in order to like just avoid this? No, teacher, honesty is the best way in order to just achieve the goals, and with the help of my parents, because I know that if I maybe tell them what is happening with me, they are going to understand me and they are going to contribute to my process. So in that case, it's like the connection that they are having with this text or this book. Now, in now we have this question that are what are the four constructs that I used in my paper. And I want to mention that the first one was the critical literacy, since it developed the students' ability to question, analyze, and critically interpret text and social realities. This is something interesting, since here, for example, in my city, there is an important street that is called the Third Street, or as we know it, La Calle Bonita. This street is full of indigenous people or people who is homeless, and they can see like these like that is connected to their own lives. When, for example, we see that there are important companies who are really they want more and more money, and the other there are people who do not have anything about this money. So in that case, it's like connecting this with the social realities that we are facing in our own cities. The second one is reading and writing as social practice. It allows the students to construct meaning by connecting texts with their own experiences and social context. The next one is literacy literature in language learning, because we most of the time believe that the literature is not going to contribute, but believe me, it's going to be really nice to see the results that our students can provide from the literature. And basically, it provides authentic language input that enhance linguistic skills and cultural understanding. In that case, we were exploring. If we analyze, for example, the Divine Comedy, we were exploring the Italian culture. We were exploring also the European culture in that moment, and the religion, since this is a religious book. And finally, the emotions in learning, since it fosters motivation and engagement by connecting learnings with students' feelings and personal experiences. And we're going to be checking in the results that I'm going to be showing you, that the students create journals based on their feelings and how they consider that this experience can be attached to their own lives. Yes. Now, I have this important question, and it says, how did the Divine Comedy contribute to this project? And basically, it contributed in four different phases. The first one is introducing to Dante's life and context, exploring the structure of the Divine Comedy, since you know that the Divine Comedy is divided in three different settings. The first one is the Inferno, the second one is the Purgatorio, and the last one is the Paradise. In that case, we have these three different settings, and we need to explore this structure, because the Inferno is representing as a whole, as a whole, yes. The Purgatorio is presenting as a mountain, and the Inferno is located into the space. There are different like circles in the space, in which they are going to be having different kinds of angels. So in that case, it was important to have the personal emotions for there, because also I need to remark here that this Divine Comedy was applied into a Catholic school. So it is important to mention that the personal emotions were there. They need all the time to express how do they feel according to their religion, what they think, what they consider about it, and what is the book like in that moment. Do you like it? Don't you like it? Why? The second one are the moral decisions. Since the students, of course, where they were reading, they could notice that the decisions there took a lot of from the moral. Yes, the moral was really important, since remember that this is an aspect in which they can say, okay, this is correct or this is incorrect. And most of the time, some students say like, but teacher, this is like so ridiculous, in order to say that a person is going to go to the inferno just for, I don't know, gluttony. If you know that food is for everyone, and if I want to eat, so in that case I just eat and eat and eat. So in that case, those moral decisions were really important there, and the life experiences that they don't have. So that was the first phase. The second phase, it was a pre and post watching movie. There is an important movie that is called Heretic, and in the movie of Heretic, students are like exploring the seventh circle of Inferno. No, sorry, it's the the seventh circle of Inferno, in which we have the heretics people. Why I decided to select this movie, because for the students were really like tricky to understand what was a heretic, and what is the best option to teach them something new, demonstrate them or show them in a different way what they want to know. So in this phase, the aim was to activate the students' prior knowledge and deepen their critical and emotional understanding by connecting key vocabulary and themes from the film with concepts explored in the literature and in the literative text. That is something that I'm really feel proud of all of them, since as you can see, maybe that can be a project for a student in a university, but this is a project that my students for seventh grade did. And it's an exploration that they basically just blow their minds. They started to see that English was not only learning a structure, but language. English sorry, was a language, was to communicate something. And of course, we need to understand that it can be complicated to find something that our students like, in order to let it all of them read. But at the same time, I can say that is not impossible. We just need to listen to all of them and to check what are their topics or what are their conversations about. That is something that we always need to take into account in order to like just achieve the goal that we want to have in our class and direct our class on their likes. Yes, it's that. In this phase, we had the chance to do the exploration of vocabulary, watch the movie of Heretic that I recommend you if you want to see it, and analyze three important things: the faith, of course, the beliefs, and the moral decisions. All of them were, again, in a journal in which they always try to transmit the things that they consider important into their own process of learning. Also, something that I want to mention is that even if the teacher was there, it was an autonomous process. The teacher helped them when they had to read. The teacher guided them in order to mention, okay, teacher, what is this word? Or teacher, I don't understand this section. Can you please explain me? I was there in order to like resolve their doubts, but I wasn't there for resolving an activity or something like that, since it was a personal process that they were doing. Even if we have a delicate aspects such as the faith and the beliefs and the moral decisions, that is something that we always need to clarify, and is the respect, the respecting to our classes, because everybody can think different. Yes. Now, in the second phase, we have now some products of them. The images that you are observing there are basically paintings, and I wanted to like demonstrate their understanding on the reading in a different way, not just writing a journal, but okay, let's transmit all the knowledge that you have into a drawing. And in that case, the purpose of this phase is to develop students' reading comprehension and critical thinking through collaborative analysis and personal reflection on Inferno and Purgatorio. In that case, we were like passing from one section to other section, and is necessary to take into account that this understanding is really valuable and it's really close to the reality of the book. Yes, I could notice here that they were really understanding and they were really motivating through it. So for example, in the first image, that is this one, I don't know if maybe you can see my mouse, but this one, we can see that the demon is behind Dante and oh my gosh, I forgot the name of the other guy, but it's Dante and okay, and he's got Virgilio is the name of that man. Is the demon behind them, because it's the last circle of the Inferno, and from that circle they can go to Purgatorio, which is represented as a light, yeah, a beautiful light there. Of course, people were there because they were sinners in they were sinners, and the Purgatorio helps to like cure or heal all the scenes, but they decided to represent it in this way. Another one decided to represent the Purgatorio as a forest, because there is a section in which the Purgatorio is a forest. It's a forest in which the trees do not have leaves. And the other one, that is this one, the student decided to represent the Inferno and Purgatorio as a mirror that is broken, because he considered in that moment that people who were in Inferno and Purgatorio committed a lot of things in their lives that broke their souls. So in that case, it's like a good representation of it. It's a good representation of what we can consider that is the reading and the comprehension of my student. And of course, I'm like checking all the time that kind of knowledge. Of course, we have a group of reading. One group decided to read Inferno, and the other group decided to read Purgatorio. And at the end, they complemented with presentations and all this stuff to let understand the other partners who didn't read the section what this section was about. And activities, we have the technical sheets, the letters, and the reflections. In the reflections, we have a lot of debates. The debates were important here because they could communicate through everything, through the language, what they consider, what they thought about all the things that we have been done until that moment. Yep. And in this part, we have the final phase in which my students had to do a final presentation. It was basically an exhibition for the school community in which we invited all the grades to these to the classroom. They decorate the classroom, and they did these. I forgot how to say it in English, but they decided to do some maquetas of the Divine Comedy and the different circles of the Inferno for doing like a representation of that section. So some students like got some customs about the Greek people and the Italian people of that moment, because they decided to take that inspiration, and they created the maquetas in order to represent it, and they create also a script in order to go maqueta by maqueta. Sorry for that, it's not English, but maqueta by maqueta, and explain each of them as if they were Virgilio, Dante, and an angel that appeared in the Purgatorio section. Sorry, the maqueta, I have here the word. Maqueta is models. So they present the models and they act as characters. And of course, in this part, they demonstrate understanding, creativity and critical thinking, because they could connect also through their speech some important aspects from our reality. And the conclusions that I have here from this important study that I did is that first, literature enhances language learning and builds critical thinkers. That is something that I am gonna be pretty sure. And of course, if we start to like create activities based on literature that goes beyond just complete a worksheet or complete a workshop, students are going to get really engaged with it. The second one is the emotion and engagement, since the motivation increase in that moment. And I want to mention something in this last part, in this last phase. Many of the students, or most of the students in the classroom, wanted to represent these three characters, but only it was just randomly. I selected three people from the ones that wanted to represent them in a random way, because they were really motivated to do it. And finally, students becomes active readers and reflective individuals. Yes, it's something that is also important to remark here, because when you are an active reader, you can have more knowledge from the books. It doesn't matter if it's maybe a novel or for a movie, or if it's maybe a book such as the Divine Comedy that doesn't have a movie at all, but because it's a book that is really complicated to put it into a movie. But it's like something that they are going to be taking from there, the vocabulary, whatever they want to use it, whatever the book is, they are going to get a lot of things from these readers, from these readings, sorry. So that is the end of this study, guys. I don't know if maybe you have some questions through the chat of YouTube.
Teacher Silva, you have the mic.
Sorry. Dear professor, thank you so much for your presentation. I was paying attention to you because I found like adorable that you could get your students read the Divine Comedy, which is not an easy task, but so congratulations. I take my hat off to you. So, well, yes, there are some questions that I would like to ask. Well, that the students were asking. The first one is, how can we ensure that literature in language learning provides authentic cultural understanding without reinforcing stereotypes?
That is a great question, because the stereotypes are always there. Yes, the stereotypes are gonna be always there. But as I mentioned in the presentation, we always need to take into account that respect must be the base of everything there. Yes. Even if we believe that stereotypes are there, we can start our classes by comparing the type of stereotypes that we have from our Colombian culture, because we also need to like try to understand and internalize what is our own culture and say if that is correct or not. In Colombia, do we have a lot of narcos, or all of us are narcos? No, teacher, they are not. all of us, consume drugs. No, teacher, no. So those are the stereotypes that maybe in Colombia, in other countries we have from Colombia, but we are not that. So in that case, like putting a real context into our reality, it's like the main aspect that we can have here in order to avoid those kind of stereotypes from different cultures.
Indeed, yes, I agree. And also like the critical thinking that they get from reading and, and like not only by reading, but also by reflecting on what they read and like they kind of start like, separating a stereotype and identify them, right? Well, we have another question, which is how do emotion influence a student motivation to read in a foreign language? Because yes, we have sometimes some of our students are afraid of, or they already they think that they can't learn, they can't read in English. It's so difficult and they will never be able to do so. So how do you manage that?
And it's a good question because I had three cases in this case. How I did it, basically my support was there. I always tried to explain them that learning was not a linear process or a process that always go up. It was like a roller coaster. Sometimes we were in the top and sometimes we were in the bottom. But we need to understand that all the process, even if you are in the bottom, you can learn from it. The emotional engagement depends not only in the reading, also in the teacher. Yes, because if you are a teacher that you say is your problem and you are going to see how you understand that, it's of course going to affect a lot to the students. But if you are a teacher who said, okay, you didn't understand it, come here, sit down next to me, and let's try to read again in order to check what you don't understand in the beginning. And in that case, the student is going to feel like you are supporting him. He's not alone in this process. You are with him, but at the same time, he's doing his process by his own because he's doing everything, all the activities related to the reading by his own. So it's something that it's important to take into account. This emotional engagement must be related also with us as teachers, because we are accompanying the process. As if you are accompanying the process, you are supporting. I can understand that sometimes can be difficult because we have, I don't know, more than 20 students in a classroom that maybe all of them are needing help. But if you also have an order into your class and you say, okay, one by one, and these are your turns, and once this student finish go, you are the next one. You can do everything there. Believe me, because I have in that moment 40 students into a classroom, and it was amazing to provide them like the chance, one by one, in order to present their inquiries, but with terms, with an organization.
Okay, great job. And now I think it is related to one question that is, how can teacher create a safe space for a student to express emotional reaction to literature? Something related to what you said, like creating a safe space for them, that they feel secure, that they feel open to ask question if they need.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have a further question is, do you use like tutoring with those students who know more, like to tutor others? Because you have a lot of
Yes.
students, 40 students is kind of a lot.
Yes. In that moment, I had the students that came from United States, England, and Australia, also from New Zealand. And those students were like my support when they finished just the activity. And I always say like, okay, please come here, you guys, and I started to distribute them to different groups. And in that case, they helped me a lot. Of course, the doubts were not solved at all because they need also the teacher's presence, because there are some students who, if the teacher don't say anything, they don't believe it. Yes. So in that case, but they help me to control those spaces, and they help me also to like provide a short feedback to them and to guide them. And once I arrived to their groups, I started to guide them. Okay, yes, you are doing great. Remember that this must be done in this way, or remember that it depends on your own perspective. It doesn't have like a follow or a right answer. Something that is important also to remark here, and as you mentioned, is the environment. Remember that, as I mentioned in the beginning, the respect must be the base of everything. And if the respect is the base of everything, they can understand that different cultures are something that we need to respect, but also different process of learning must be respected as well. And in the different process of learning, they can understand that some students maybe are gonna take more time than them, and in that case, they start to have like this tutoring soul by their own, this tutorial spirit by their own. So it's nice to check it, and it's nice to like analyze that even students can rise or can, yes, that like this spirit of help others, it was born from them.
Great. Thank you so much. There's another one. This is an interesting question. Now we are in a digital era where students are mostly interested in computers, cell phones, maybe, social network, which gives quick information. So it's becoming more difficult for them to focus, concentrate, read long, test. So how could teachers train reading a skill in this new digital era without taking into account literature, art, so on? Like, new generation maybe are not that focused on those stuff. So how do you manage that? How do you make them feel interested?
Okay, in this case, it's basically make them part of the reading. It's made them part of the reading. Even if we have long text, we can start to divide the text into different participations that our students can have into the classroom. And how did I do that? Basically through the guided reading. How is the guided reading? Basically, I am the teacher, so I start to read, and then I'm going to give turns for continue reading. In that case, everybody's gonna be paying attention. And at the end of each paragraph, I'm going to start asking questions related to the understanding that they got from that section. If they maybe do not understand something, or there are new words, or there are new like expressions for them, okay, we can explore it at the end of the paragraph, and we can continue, and in that way, we're like verifying their understanding in the reading. Yes, but that is the way, like making them part. Also, providing examples, even with our personal lives, if it's necessary, and if you have to introduce personal narratives to your students in order to create this connection and this interest on the class and the reading, you can do it. Go ahead, because it's something that you are going to be like exploring new ways, and even and that is something that is true. If it's a gossip, everybody's going to understand, no matter what is the language. Because I noticed that. No, I noticed that. I could notice that my French teacher were speaking a gossip with another person, but it was in French, and I was listening at the same time, and I said like, I can understand you. Also, the students can do that. The students, most of the time, maybe when I'm talking with my partners from the school, we are talking in English, and the students are like paying attention to what I'm talking with him, to him, sorry. And it's interesting because the teacher said like, ya te entendí, profe. So the gossip is something universal, and if you introduce your personal narratives to the reading, it's gonna be more beneficial.
Yes, because gossip nurtures our soul. Okay. Now I just want to read some comments, because there are a lot of positive comments on your presentation. They are saying, students are saying, it's such an interesting project. The class was very constructive and interesting, and they want to know which is your favorite book.
Ooh.
Do you have?
Okay, it's interesting because it's a question that nobody has asked me until the moment. My favorite book.
Yeah, because you support reading, so we believe.
Yes, I have read since I was 4 years old, and currently I'm 26 years old. My father taught me to read since I was a child, and I have read many books in my entire life. I can say that maybe my favorite genre of books are those related to religion, such as the Divine Comedy, but a critic to something, yes? But if I have to mention a specific book, not a book, but a saga, and I will say Game of Thrones. It was like my first saga that I read. when I was like 15 years old. And I read all the saga in maybe 3 months. It was something that engaged me, and I like took advantage of it because when I started to read, I had to go to the library because here in Ibagué we have an important library that is called Darío Echandía, and I had to borrow the books. So in that case, I will say that that is my favorite saga because I consider that it create like an after and before.
Okay, thank you so much. And just comments, positive comments is a very important topic. It also explains very well the difficulties and how to find strategies to encourage reading. Actually, I'm the director of the course Didactics of English. And in my course, they learn how to teach, right? And for me, like, it was very interesting that my students were here listening to you on strategies on promoting and teaching reading, because it's very important. So thank you so much. It's a very interesting point as we are all going through our practicum and working on improving our English in order to be more confident and assertive in the teaching environment. Okay, thank you so much, dear Professor Juan. You did an excellent job. We hope to see you around here with more presentations because it was very interesting for us. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Yeah, we
Appreciate it.
we do as well. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so let's continue. Give me one moment. Okay, so now we are going to move to the our presentation, Heliconia's Dreamer, Siembra, Florece, Transforma. Our speaker is the PhD Cristian Camilo Reyes. He is a PhD in Education and Society and Master in Language Didactics from Universidad de La Salle. Holds a bachelor degree in Modern Languages from Universidad del Quindío. He's a full-time faculty member at Universidad del Quindío, a researcher in the ESAPIDEX B group, and a facilitator of the Heliconia's Dreamer Meets community for research, training, and innovation. His research focuses on the teaching of foreign languages from a critical and decolonial perspective. He believes in a pedagogy that challenges inequalities, fosters respect, and paves the way toward a just, free, and deeply human society. And he is with Professor María del Socorro Gallego. She is a Master in ICT for Education and Bachelor degree in Spanish and Literature from Universidad del Quindío. She's a rural teacher at Escuela Lorencita Villegas de Santos in the municipality of Finlandia, Quindío. Through her teaching practice, she saw words and dreams in her students, persisting through education in her territory where the hope of a world full of possibilities continued to flourish. Beautiful. Okay. And welcome. Please open the microphone to check if we can.
Okay, here. You'll listen to me?
Yes, go ahead. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. I am glad to be here with you today. Well, in this presentation, I will discuss about the work of Heliconia's Dreamers, a collective that engages with rural English teacher education through the colonial and critical lens, structured around three interconnected processes that I am going to explain you. And well, in here, you can watch the picture of this group that is working with me, and in which we are trying to discuss about different topics, taking into account the perspectives of being part of being a teacher in English, but specifically in the rural context. So my partner is here, Maria del Socorro. She's a rural teacher in Quindío. And well, I am going to explain you in general terms what Heliconia Dreamer is. So in this part, we have Heliconia's Dreamers. And Heliconia's Dreamers, it has emerged as a community of education in which we discuss different topics related to rural education, but specifically the teaching of English as a foreign language. We know that in this context, there are different discussions, and English education has historically been shaped by deficit discourses and urban-centric assumptions. So we believe that in different contexts, they have to learn English in a way. And sometimes we are not connected with some realities. In this part, Heliconia's Dreamers takes these ideas into account, and we try to discuss about it in order to connect some knowledge that we discover in rural contexts with the idea of teaching English with these realities. So with a group of teachers, we have to decide to perform three important verbs with this pedagogical work with these three verbs, as you can see: to sow, sembrar; to bloom, florecer; and finally to transform. This is not just an idea or just a way to follow. In this verse, we can find a methodology step in order to identify our realities and to perform the way in which English can be taught in another way. The first one, to sow, we are starting from what already exists in our realities in at school. So we identify the local knowledge, oral traditions, community practices, and the idea is that teachers' experiences are the most important part of this planification of our activities. For that reason, students' linguistics repertoires are taken into account not just in English or in Spanish. In some schools, we can find indigenous languages that they are considering these planification processes. So we started with mapping the territory. We identify these sections that we find in rural schools in Quindío, our department. And we started to perform, for example, what kind of English is the language that we want to teach. That one that is performed, taking into account standardized levels, or the one that dialogues with the territory, with the knowledge that we have here, and of course that takes into account the practices of teachers and also involves the communities. So for that reason, the vocabulary is not structured just taking into account the suggested curriculum. We discuss with our realities, we discuss with our memories, we discuss with the beliefs that each community has. And of course, in this part, we have a central message, and it is English learning begins in what we are, is not important content. So for that reason, we identify that we have some challenges in our schools. But the first one is that teachers, rural teachers, are not recognized as teachers. So with the current bilingual plan of teaching English, we recognize teachers just as implementers. They follow the suggested curriculum, but they don't think the suggested curriculum. They don't dialogue with the realities, with the suggested curriculum. And do you know why? Because most of these ideas is that the rural teacher, he doesn't speak English, or he didn't receive the training for being an English teacher in this context. And of course, because mother languages teacher, or for example, you that you are studying this degree, maybe when you have the application for an exam or to be enrolled in the magisterio, sometimes we don't decide to participate in these rural areas because that is the part that many people don't want to go there to these rural schools. So most of the teachers that are at the moment in rural areas, they are teaching, first of all, the language that we want to teach. That one that is performed, taking into account the because they want. In some cases. In other cases, it's because it was the last place that in the calling for applications, it was the only one that was left. So in here, we decided to recognize these stories, these memories, and of course the narratives that in which you become a teacher, and particularly the rural teacher. So for that reason, we identify these ideas, and it is the first verb of our methodological path. The second one is to bloom. Okay, when we recognize our identities, when we recognize our way of become teacher, so what are you doing there in that rural school? So in that section, we started a collective creation where language is a space of co-construction. Me, for example, I don't want to teach English in these rural schools because the protagonists are the teachers. So they are going to be identified and recognize themselves as practitioners. No, they are creators. They don't implement just the curriculum because the curriculum is discussed, because the curriculum is reflected. And these reflections, of course, requires time. These reflections require planification. These requirements, okay, the collaborative, perform listening, each necessity, okay, identify the needs of the community. And of course, in this part, when we resignify the curriculum, we are going to identify what is the collaborative material that we are going to design, taking into account our schools and, of course, our realities. So in this section of Bloom, we decided to have dialogical learning spaces in which we create materials from local realities. And of course, in these sections, as teachers and the community around the school, they are going to write, they are going to narrate, they are going to translate, they are going to provide information and participate in the construction of this material that then my partner is going to present to you. And of course, we take into account the different aspects of technology, into artificial intelligence that, of course, at the moment it's adapted. And in this way, we try to resignify the curriculum, but taking into account the voices of our community, of our teachers, and they are involved. They don't receive just a training. They are involved because we planify in these pedagogical practices, in these dialogical learning spaces. We co-create, and then they are going to apply that on the schools, and they decide if that is accepted or not accepted for the community. What is for example, what kind of troubles they find in the implementation of these didactic options, or for example, what was the reception for the students or from the community, because at the end they are going to be involved. Another thing that is important here is that Escuela Nueva, that most of the time they works with rural school, they don't have a specific material for teaching English as a foreign language, or they don't take into account some particular realities that we find in the territories. For example, ethnic groups or other languages that at the moment they are trying to survive. Yes. So in this point, we recognize rural realities and we involve with them, because that is the last part of our verb. So try to transform. And transformation, as we know, involves the development of critical consciousness and, of course, to be engaged with pedagogical agency. For that reason, we identify here English not as a foreign language that is going to be taught in order to acquire a level that is determined by some specific points. But of course, it's because we work and try to work with linguistic points. For example, teachers, they reflect what English to teach, for whom, and for what purposes. Here, we take a position in which I teach English just to acquire a level, a proficiency level, A1, A2, B1, B2, that is decided for the suggested curriculum, or we try to resignify English that dialogues with our realities, that makes the possibility for our students to discuss with their own knowledge, their own territory, their ancestral knowledge, and the realities that are here. And as we said in Spanish, realidades encarnadas en el territorio. So for that reason, we are doing this work. We are working with these teachers that at the moment we are trying to resignify in a different way that rural teachers are not deficient teachers. They are creators. And of course, they are producers and resignifiers of new knowledges. Of course, in this part, some teachers, when we started to work, they said, no, at the beginning, I felt with no confidence for teaching English because I am not an English teacher. But now with this one, I discovered that I have many strategies to teach, and that also for me, it is possible to do a great job with my community. And of course, I recognize myself as a maker. Yes, and in that way, we resignify the linguistic policies, because in this process of Heliconia's Dreamers, we make a stronger connection between a school and the community. So with that way, we decided to be committed to dismantle the colonial logics that have historical, disordinated rural knowledge, and of course, the rural knowledge and agencies that are in these sections. I know that most of you have had the opportunity to make an interruption in a rural school, but sometimes we recognize these rural schools as places that they need to be provided, but we don't recognize these spaces as labs of making new knowledge, but particularly to resignify the practices that are happening in this part. So if you would like to learn more about Heliconia's Dreamers, you can scan this code and you can identify what is the kind of job that we are doing in a different way, or as I said, in other ways. So we don't bring English to the territory because we let the territory to reshape English language teaching. And for that reason, at this moment, I am going to provide the word Profesora María del Socorro Gallego, profesora rural de la sede Lorencita Villegas de Santos en el municipio de Finlandia. Entonces, en este momento, profesora.
Hola, buenas noches para todos. Agradezco a todas las personas que han hecho posible este encuentro y esta reflexión que les quiero hacer. Yo soy docente de la sede del Colegio Francisco Miranda de Finlandia y pertenezco a la sede Lorencita Villegas de Santos. Es una sede rural. En estos momentos tengo 11 niños y trabajo en escuela multigrado. Empezamos hace más o menos unos 3 a 4 años con el profe Cristian. Llegó a nuestro colegio y pues nos reunió a las docentes de las sedes y pues nos expuso varias ideas sobre el inglés, ¿sí? Entonces yo en este momento pues agradezco al profe porque él nos hizo ver como como las necesidades por las que estábamos pasando, ¿sí? Nosotras siendo maestras rurales y tenemos que enfrentarnos a todas estas clases de inglés, de educación física, bueno, sin ser especialistas en este caso en el inglés, ¿sí? Entonces nos llevó a reflexionar sobre la necesidad de replantear estos currículos, esta forma de enseñar inglés, y me llevó también a pensar en cómo lo estaba haciendo, si yo estaba haciendo el trabajo de una buena manera o si no. Entonces empezamos a crear el proyecto de Liconias, le colocamos un nombre, nos reunimos entre todas. Ya empezamos con el apoyo del colegio y nos reunimos todos los viernes en la jornada de 7 a 1 de la tarde, ¿sí? El último viernes de cada mes. Ese tiempo nos lo da el colegio y también nos reunimos una jornada extra, que es así ya es tiempo de nosotros, en un colegio de Finlandia. Nos reunimos de 2 a 5 también para hacer las planeaciones. Y también tenemos encuentros virtuales, entonces son encuentros que nos han ido enriqueciendo y nos han abierto pues como más las puertas y el sentido crítico hacia cómo estamos enseñando nosotros el inglés. En esas reuniones que nosotros tenemos, pues son muy, muy enriquecedoras porque compartimos experiencias, porque compartimos necesidades de cada sede, qué estrategias estamos utilizando y, y también estamos organizando el currículo, ¿sí? El currículo sugerido y lo estamos adaptando al contexto, que esta es como la idea de nuestro proyecto Liconias. Hacer que los niños aprendan inglés por medio del contexto. Hemos trabajado la cartilla Other Ways, que ya tiene, aquí trabajamos animales que son propios de la región, ¿sí? Tenemos al colibrí que lo llamamos Free y él orienta todas las actividades que vamos a desarrollar. Aquí vemos canciones que son fáciles para los niños. Tenemos también a Tuki, el barranquero, que él es el que aquí es donde se desarrollan pues como las ideas, el vocabulario que vamos a trabajar. Tenemos también a la mariposa Fly, que es ya la conexión con otras áreas. Y trabajamos también a Tilo, que ya aquí involucra a la comunidad, a Tilo del armadillo. Entonces, como pueden ver, estos animales son propios de la región, son animales que los niños todos los días pueden observar, no son desconocidos para ellos y entonces por ahí tratamos de empezar. Los niños, ¿cómo se han sentido con esta implementación de esta cartilla? Muy contentos. Ellos se han empoderado esto, de este tema, ya no sienten temor. Yo he visto los niños también que eran muy tímidos y ya con esta cartilla, la cartilla pues se presenta en inglés y también tiene la traducción en español y muy fácil para ellos pues comprenderla. Sus familias también se han visto muy involucradas. Ellas, cuando los niños llevan el trabajo para que ellos, por ejemplo, les compartan las experiencias. Por ejemplo, en la primera unidad que se habla sobre salud y vida, ellos debían trabajar los cuidados para el cuerpo, qué medicinas se colocaban, entonces ellos iban y miraban y aprovechaban esas riquezas que tienen tan grandes en sus hogares de ramas aromáticas, ¿sí? Entonces, y todo ese saber que tienen los papás, los padres, la comunidad, entonces ellos ponían en práctica esto, entonces tuvieron la oportunidad de elaborar productos con estas plantas aromáticas, que un repelente para los mosquitos, que un tratamiento para el cabello, que un jarabe para la tos. Y entonces, mire, toda esa riqueza pues que se está trabajando acá, y los niños eran felices, ellos grababan los videos en casa haciendo estas recetas, y es donde veíamos y resaltábamos que estos niños, los más tímidos, cómo aprendieron a empoderarse de la situación y cómo explicaban. Eso fue algo muy significativo para ellos, ¿sí? También cuando se habla de los trabajos, pero se habla sobre los trabajos de acá, del contexto, los que ellos hacen, y muchos de los niños los hacen. Muchos de los niños ordeñan, sus papás guadañan, sus papás recolectan café, recogen huevos, cuidan gallinas, entonces ellos están ahí empoderados de esto, y ellos pues tienen mucho conocimiento y son felices trabajando el inglés así, ¿sí? También con los alimentos que se dan en la región, todas estas cosechas que se dan por acá, son productos que ellos pues disfrutan, y es muy enriquecedor este trabajo. Igual los padres de familia también, cuando se les pide que hagan una receta, que la compartan, y los niños la llevan a la escuela, estamos pensando en hacer una feria, de pronto en Finlandia, donde ellos puedan mostrar todos estos productos que se están haciendo, y, y los papás pues se sienten muy contentos porque en la escuela se les está teniendo en cuenta, y, y lo más importante es que no se nos lo están llevando, porque existe la creencia de que las sedes rurales son escuelitas donde no enseñan nada, ¿sí? Entonces tenemos esa problemática, que se llevan los niños para la ciudad, desconociendo de pronto toda la riqueza que nosotros tenemos por acá en el contexto, tanta maravilla que tenemos, tanta naturaleza, el aire puro, que no hay contaminación, que no hay problemas de drogadicción, esta vida tan sana. Entonces, los padres de familia, afortunadamente, gracias a todo esto, están entendiendo, que no deben llevarse los niños, porque en nuestras escuelas rurales, y ahora con este proyecto, pues estamos brindándole una riqueza muy grande a los niños, de la cual ellos se sienten empoderados, y aman a su contexto, ¿sí? Que en el futuro, cuando crezcan, no se quieran ir para otro lado, o que no quieran estar, porque esa es una de las problemáticas de hoy en día en la ruralidad, que los niños o los jóvenes se van yendo. Entonces ya son una población ya de gente adulta, que ya sus niños se van, porque la idea está también en los papás. La mejor vida está en el extranjero o en el exterior. Entonces, esto nos ha servido también para empezar como a sembrar esa semilla de valorar el contexto, de amar nuestras costumbres, ¿sí? Yo vivo en la vereda, y yo soy amante grande de esto, de este contexto tan hermoso que tenemos, y yo he tratado de hacerles sentir eso a mis niños, y están empoderados también de esto, ¿sí? De que disfruten el aire puro, de que disfruten todos estos paisajes tan hermosos que tenemos, de los animales, que aprendan a cuidarlos y a valorarlos, ¿sí? ¿Cuál es de pronto un reto que tenemos nosotras como participantes de este proyecto? Seguir manteniendo ese interés como en el aprendizaje, y en la enseñanza del inglés, ese amor por el inglés, esa investigación que debemos tener, esa búsqueda de nuevas prácticas que hagan que los niños se enamoren de este idioma, ¿sí? Ya empezamos, ya sembramos, ya estamos recogiendo, y esa es una de los deseos pues que tenemos en nuestro proyecto.
Ujú. Muy bien, muchas gracias, profe. También, pues, parte de este ejercicio lo que lleva es a lo que se proyecta precisamente en la última página de nuestra cartilla, y es algo que construíamos también dentro de nuestro ejercicio de encontrarnos, y es cómo pensamos en el ICONIAS la enseñanza del inglés en los escenarios rurales. Entonces es imaginar que subimos a un mirador muy alto para ver todo lo que está a lo lejos y desde allí se puede observar todo lo que hay más allá de lo que conoces. Así es como debemos pensar en aprender un idioma extranjero, mirar lo que hay más allá de nuestro mundo, pero siempre con los pies firmes en el lugar donde estamos. Aprender un nuevo idioma es como subir a ese mirador, mirando lo que está afuera, pero sin olvidar de dónde venimos y qué tenemos cerca. So, this is the kind of work that we are doing. So, making the dialogue of languages, not only one language, pero también el español, pero también el inglés, and also indigenous languages. So, no only one language is the most important. In this section, we discuss with teachers, and they are recognized as the practitioners, as makers, as planners, y ese es lo que la profesora María hoy está contando y quien también hizo parte del desarrollo de estas actividades, de la creación de esta cartilla y donde nos consideramos también un colectivo que repiensa la enseñanza del inglés en la ruralidad de una forma u otra. Muchas gracias y no sé si tienen alguna duda, comentarios.
Muchas gracias a la profe María Gallego por acompañarnos hoy, por contarnos su linda experiencia, profe Cristian Camilo. Sin palabras, realmente, pues esto es un trabajo muy lindo que se hace. Y te felicito y los felicito porque realmente muchos comentarios en el chat también dicen que uno a veces no le apuesta a la ruralidad, ¿sí? Parece que ser profesor rural es un castigo, ¿sí? Para algunos profesores puede parecer eso, pero ver cómo se transforma y cómo se vive la ruralidad desde otro punto de vista, eh, pues es muy inspirador. Entonces, para nuestros futuros licenciados, creo que eh, es otra ventana, otra oportunidad que ellos pueden ver de transformar realidades y es súper interesante y es una de las apuestas de la universidad. Sí, acá le apostamos a lo local, a ir a las comunidades, a transformarlas y eso es importantísimo sembrarlo en los futuros licenciados de esta universidad. Entonces, esta presentación fue muy al lugar, todo lo que hacen es muy hermoso y quiero hacerles algunas preguntitas, ya no tenemos mucho tiempo, pero pues voy a hacer como las preguntas más relevantes. How does a rural student motivation change when class content is based on their own territory instead of foreign context?
Ok. Creo que esa pregunta la puede responder directamente la profe María.
Ok.
Profe María, ¿de qué manera en la implementación de Other Ways, de esto que hemos planificado y hemos hecho en colectivo, cómo ha cambiado la motivación en los estudiantes cuando se le presenta un contenido que nace del territorio, más allá de presentar un contenido tal vez como el que ya se imponen en otros tipos de materiales que llegan por parte del ministerio?
No, lo han tomado muy bien con esos nuevos contenidos. Ellos, pues como lo hablaba antes, trabajan en el contexto. Son temas que ellos ya conocen, actividades, diferentes cosas que ellos han trabajado. Entonces ya es más, y tienen más la confianza para hacerlo y trabajan también en unión con su familia, con sus familias, que también es muy importante y llevan estos aprendizajes a sus familias, ¿sí? Están rodeados de contexto y es un aprendizaje significativo para ellos. Es muy importante.
Ujú.
Muchas gracias. Voy a leer algunos comentarios de los estudiantes. Excelente reflexión. Gracias por compartir y mostrarnos que en las zonas rurales se puede innovar con el inglés. La educación rural es una labor muy hermosa y sobre todo llevarles una L2, una segunda lengua. Felicidades. Excelente testimonio. Y cómo articularon el inglés con lo que ven en sus contextos. Muy bonito, muy satisfactorio ver que realizan proyectos para zonas rurales para enseñar una segunda lengua. Maravillada con este proyecto, realmente qué grato fue toda esta exposición, hermosa labor. Hay una pregunta si en dónde se puede conseguir la cartilla, si ustedes ya
Bien,
la
en esta,
comparten.
ok, en este momento la cartilla está en pilotaje porque pues está validando todo lo que se está co-construyendo, pero entonces en ese enlace o en ese código QR que estaba en la grabación, ahí se va a colgar la cartilla para luego su posterior divulgación, ¿sí? Quiero detallar muy puntualmente y dejar esto en claro, es que el Iconias Dreamers es reposicionar la labor de los docentes rurales, no como personas que implementan, sino como personas que también crean y construyen otras posibilidades. Entonces, aquí también se resignifica la labor de muchos y muchas maestros que están en estos escenarios. Y el Iconias Dreamers también es una manera de reconectarnos, no con lo impuesto, sino con lo que nace del territorio.
Excelente reflexión. Muchísimas gracias, profesor Cristian Camilo. Muchísimas gracias a la docente María Gallego por acompañarnos hoy. Eh, una vez más, pues fue muy motivador la charla que tuvimos hoy. Esperamos tenerlos nuevamente pronto por acá en otros espacios. Y muchísimas gracias. Les recuerdo a los estudiantes que el link de asistencia está en el chat de Teams y cada docente, dependiendo de cada grupo en el que estén, Didactics, Foreign Language o Methodology, por favor, marcar en campus la asistencia. ¿Ok? Entonces vamos a dar cierre. La profe Steffi Marín nos va a dar unas palabras de cierre y terminamos la actividad. Muchas gracias.
Okay, thank you very much. Dear students, thank you for your active participation in this EPICA session. We hope this space has encouraged you to reflect critically and take meaningful action in your pedagogical practices. Remember that learning is not only about observing, but also about transforming reality through education. Please make sure to complete the attendance and evaluation form shared in the chat, in the YouTube chat at the top of it. Thank you to our speakers for their valuable contributions and to all of you for being part of this experience. Have a great evening. Goodbye, dear students and professors. Thank you very much.